So guys, we saw how we change money supply, and when you change money supply, you are able to see there's a change in the GDP that takes place, right? And so money supply is a powerful tool that can change GDP through either direct monetary transmission, which is where simply money supply can directly make the GDP go up by making AD go up, because when money supply goes up, more people have cash or liquidity, and therefore AD go up. Or indirect monetary transmission, that's something which we saw last time, where we see interest rates and exchange rate to change when the money supply goes up, which can make the GDP go up. There's another discussion which is called the MV equals to PT discussion. Remember, what is monetary? What is this equation MV2? We call this quantity theory of money. This is something which we did in AS, the quantity theory of money. And in the quantity theory of money discussion, we did this kind of a discussion. We said that MV equals to PT, where M is your money supply, V is the velocity or number of times money is changing hands, P is the price level, and T is your quantity or the the number of transactions. Okay, so we did this in AS, and I want to sort of recap this, and then we talk about what the view of Keynesians and monetarists are, so that we can sort of then look at basically how this also helps in explaining what we've been doing so far. So according to the view I'll talk about later, but first let me explain this. So this equation says this, that MV must equals to PT. And basically a simple look at it is that, for example, if there are 100 units in an economy, okay, and the price of each unit, this is by the way, Q means T or Q is 100, and the price of each unit is 2, then basically the nominal GDP, the total value of the GDP in this economy will be $200. And so, how much money do you require to undertake this $200 worth of transaction? The answer will be, well, 200 can be sufficient to meet this demand of money. However, what if government only prints? What if money supply is only, like $20? Government only prints only $20. This means V is equal to PT over M, which means money has to change hands, 200 divided by 20, which means money has to change hand 10 times in order to undertake $200 worth of transactions. So that's what our MV equals to PT theory said. This, that money supply times velocity, yani ke 20 times 10 is equal to PT, which is the total value or nominal value of the GDP. Not the real value, but nominal value of the GDP, because T is your total quantity, P is the price, and therefore when the nominal GDP is $200 and the government is only printing $20, then the number of times money has to change hands has to be 10. Okay, this is something which we discuss in AS economics as well. Now, how do we use this today to explain our concepts? So this is where the whole idea where monetarist comes into play. Monetarist said this, that when you look at MV equals to PT, okay, when you look at MV equals to PT, they come up with this idea that V and T, let me use another color. They say this, that V and T are constant. When V and T are constant, basically V and T can be removed from this equation. So what happens basically, if V and T are constant, whenever M goes up, which means money supply goes up, you automatically will see price level to go up. So they came up with this argument that money supply directly makes, I mean, this money supply directly causes the price level to go up. Mariam, let me move on to this. Well, this was a page that we talked about last time. We said this, that MV equals to PT is the equation that I explained. And now I'm saying this, that when you look at MV equals to PT, when you look at MV equals to PT, that's one way of looking at things. But how do we use this equation? Well, according to the monitors, V and T are constant, and whenever M goes up, price level goes up. Now, why are V and T constant? That's the first thing we don't look at. They say V is basically uh, number of times. Let me write this. V is basically um, number of times. Sorry, number of times money changes hands. And the reason why money is changing hand is simply because of what they argued this is because of your spending pattern. And they argue this that this spending pattern, now this color is not showing, this spending pattern stays constant. So they argue this, guys, that this spending pattern basically stays constant. And the reason why it stays constant, according to the sort of monitors, is simple argument that they say is that, like if you look at any individual, let's say I look at you guys right now, you are in A levels, and because you're in A levels for the first for, last 2 years, last year and this year, your expenditure has remained the same because you're in A levels. Um, and as soon as you go to college for the next 4 years, you're going to have another spending pattern, and then let's say you go to job market after those 4 years, you will have another spending pattern, and that spending pattern basically depends on your lifestyle and depends on your needs, and those needs do not really change that often. So what they argue is this, that the reason why money has to change hands is because of spending pattern, and that spending pattern basically stays constant, doesn't change that much. Second thing they argue this, that T is your number of transactions, and T is also something that doesn't change. And the reason why it doesn't change, because it depends on what you call our um, our factors of production available. So your land, labor, capital, enterprise, all of those factors of production that are available, that do not really change that often. Because they do not change that often, so T doesn't really change that much. And also the fact that, like in at any point in time, the economy, according to classical thought, according to classical thought, it's at full employment. And therefore, monetarists, which are kind of like an extension of the classical thought, they believe that because your LRAS may look like this, so whenever your money supply goes up, you may see AD to go up, and ultimately, when AD goes up, we saw how the economy will see, because of flexibility of wages, ultimately aggregate supply to go backward, and therefore a rise in AD because of the money supply going up can make basically can make our price level to go up. So the idea goes this diagram, by the way, is a older thought that I just brought it, but classical and Keynesians, classical and monetary economists are agreeing on the idea that money supply can make the price level to go up. Um, and the reason why, according to classical, it happens is because of the MV equals to PT. According to monetarists, it happens because of the MV equals to PT theory, where V and T are constant. So whenever money supply goes up, it directly makes the price level to go up. Um, Now, Keynesians have a counter argument to it. Before I talk about Keynesians' counter argument, I want to know if there's any question, if anyone has any question. Any questions, guys? T is simply events. T is the quantity, the total output that is out there. So T is the quantity of output that is basically out there, and that T is basically depends on your factors of production, your land, labor, capital, enterprise, and that land, labor, capital, enterprise doesn't really change over time too much, because and T will not change, or quantity will not change. Uh, and this diagram, by the way, this diagram is not supposed to be discussed here. This diagram is the classical view. जो classical view कहता था क्या, कि जब आपका AD बढ़ेगा तो आप full employment से बाहर चले गए, और अगर आप बाहर चले गए हो तो ultimately you're making people work overtime maybe, and ultimately when people start to sort of ask for higher wages because you are going beyond YF, AS curve will shift backward, and ultimately you are making the rise in AD is causing your price level to go up. The AS curve shifts backward because of the flexibility of wages. We said this, people will be asking for higher wages um, when the AD is going up and people are working overtime, and therefore when that cost of production go up, that basically makes the aggregate supply curve shift backward and prices to go up, because people will ask for wages to rise, which cause the cost of production to go up. So COP, cost of production, to go up, and AS to fall. Okay. Um, Mariam is saying, so in the short run, in classical, can workers work overtime, which affect the factor of production? Okay, in the short run, according to classical economists, you can meet the increased demand. In the long run, you may not be able to do that, but in the short run, you can meet the increased demand, but not in the long run. In the long run, wages will catch up because wages are flexible. So guys, this was the classical view. Keynesians disagree to it. Keynesians over of the argument. This is Keynesian view. Keynesian view is simply that when you look at MV equals to PT, they said V and T do not necessarily need to be constant. And the first thing they said was this, that V is not constant because they said if V is your spending pattern, sometimes it happens that you might have, you know, uh, you might have what we call access to um, debt. Like, for example, you might have a credit card or you might have a bank loan. If you have bank loans or credit cards or any easy access to money, you may end up having a spending pattern different from what you have in a regular situation. For example, I go to sort of Dolmen Mall, I go to what you call it. I go to any mall, for example, and I see a TV, and let's say I like that TV, and let's say right now I'm not planning to buy a TV, but I was like, you know what, it's a great sale that is happening. Why don't I just use my credit card and buy this TV? And when I do so, this means that my spending pattern is not constant. So they say this, that we is not stable because it can change due to many factors such as use of credit card. The fact that V is constant or stable is not a good argument, because sometimes people may buy beyond their means. Sometimes people can go buy something completely different when they have access to money, like because of easy debt or whatever loans. So they said V doesn't need to be constant. And they also said T is basically your total output. But what if your LRAS is like this? If your LRAS is like this, according to Keynesians, this is what LRAS look like, which is at YF. What if you are here? What if there is massive unemployment happening? If there's massive unemployment happening, this means that uh, T doesn't need to be constant, because T basically depends. If T is in this inelastic zone or full employment, then of course T is constant. But what if T or quantity is not constant because you are in an unemployment zone? And therefore they say this, that T, Keynesians also argue that LRAS is not necessarily inelastic. They argue that the economy can be below full capacity for a very long time. So if the economy is below full capacity for a very long time, then you're looking at LRAS to be like this, to be like this kind of a curve, which means even if your AD goes up, your price level will not go up. So they disagree um, with the monetarist view. They say this MV equals to PT doesn't need to result in, when M goes up, P goes up, because they disagree with this. They say this is wrong because they say V and T are not necessarily constant. So this is the argument they raise against the monetarist view. Does that make sense, guys? Are we good? Any questions? Okay, so Let's look at some of the MCQs, which can help us understand. So the diagram shows the changes in the broad and narrow money, narrow measures of money supply. So they're giving you, if I could zoom this diagram, they gave you narrow money and broad money. Remember, narrow money, broad money includes narrow money. We said that in our class. The broad money is narrow money plus more. So look at this, guys. For euro area, the narrow money is kind of like going down here, while the broad money is going up. For Britain, Britain is like big dotted line. You have, it's very difficult to read this, but Britain is this graph, which is kind of going up. But Japan is this graph. So this is Britain. This is Japan. This is Euro. And this bit here is US. Okay. So let's look at the question before we look at the graph. Which is the only area to have experienced a contraction either of its measures of money supply? Which means both the narrow money and broad money must be going down. So इसका बेस्ट तरीका ये है कि अगर आप ये देखें, this is going up, this is going kind of up, this is, from the look of it, it is going, I don't know, looks like stable, but if you look at it from the beginning point, it is kind of going down, but this is kind of stable throughout. So if I look at this US, is the diagram which is showing from here to here, slight decrease to happen. And either also, if you look at it, US is the only, is also the graph that is falling. So both uh, both narrow and broad money is going down. The answer will be US in this case, where both the graphs are showing a decline to happen. Okay, so are you all with me? Is there any question? This is kind of like a more of a graph reading question, but narrow money and broad money, but you are looking at very sort of fine details. So it's a bit difficult to read. I don't know how much of the screen you can see. But is there any question before we move on? So narrow money and broad money both were showing a slight decline to happen. Okay, let's look at now. If you look at loanable funds, guys, loanable funds is no longer in our syllabus, so we can sort of skip this question. Loanable funds. Let's look at this one. If the money supply is fixed, a decrease in economic activity will do what? So if the money supply is fixed, because this is my money supply, guys, right? And if it's fixed, a decrease in economic activity should do what? Should result in demand for money to fall. So I will say demand for money will probably going to fall, and that may cause your interest rate to actually fall. So increasing interest rate doesn't really make sense because there's a decrease in economic activity to happen. Now, increase the transaction of demand for money, and the answer is probably not. It should decrease it. Raise the liquidity preference schedule or reduce the income velocity of circulation. Now look at this, guys. If MV equals to PT is the equation, okay? And they're saying this, if money supply is fixed, okay, and PT is going down, because PT means your nominal GDP, so therefore PT is going down. One could argue this, V will go down. So D is the right answer. Exactly, Aman, that makes sense. D is the right answer because if economic activity goes down, the PT goes down. So when PT goes down and M is constant, V will go down. So D is the right answer. Okay, does that make sense, everyone? C, by the way, doesn't really make sense as an answer. So C is just too confusing, but raises the liquidity preference schedule basically means raises the demand for money. Yeah, Lindsay, what they're saying that if the money supply is fixed, so MV equals to PT, M is fixed, and they're saying there's a decrease in economic activity. If there's a decrease in economic activity, PT will fall. and that decrease in economic activity where PT is falling will definitely cause V to fall or reduces the income velocity of circulation because MV equals to PT. Okay, and we should decrease interest rates, not increase interest rates. An increase in the money supply leads to, how do we know we have to assume Keynesian's view? I didn't assume Keynesian's view. I assumed, yeah, you're right. That's a good question. How do we assume? I assume basically my economic rationale. I was like, yeah, interest rate तो गिर रहा है. अगर MV equals to PT हो और अगर आप simple argument देखो, अगर ये M constant होगा और PT अगर गिर रहा है तो क्या होगा इस equation को? V must be going down. Now मॉनिटरिस्ट वो बोलेंगे कि नहीं भाई वी एंड टी तो कांस्टेंट होते हैं टू स्टार्ट ऑफ विद, तो ये और बात है. लेकिन एम वी इज इक्वल टू पी टी सिर्फ मॉनिटरिस्ट की थ्योरी नहीं है, ये क्वांटिटी थ्योरी ऑफ मनी है. दिस कैन बी ऑफ एनी वन. देन व्हाट बी सेइंग, गिव मी 1 minute as well. या सो वन थिंग फॉर श्योर जो मैंने एक्सप्लेन किया था यहाँ पे कि जब मनी सप्लाई बढ़ेगी सो इंटरेस्ट रेट गिरेगा, और अगर इंटरेस्ट रेट गिरेगा सो पीपल विल होल्ड more money balances. So that's why ये तो पक्का पक्का this is wrong. People should hold more money balances because of speculative demand for money. We also said this that price of bonds and equities, by the way, whenever interest rates go down, price of equities and bond should always go up because they are financial assets. The reason is very simple. Interest rate goes down, these bonds and equities will become more favorable to invest on. Their demand should go up, and their demand should go up, price will go up. Uh, then comes velocity of circulation, which is probably where I'll agree with Daniel that MV is equal to PT. And if P and T are constant, if money supply goes up, velocity goes down. And here we are basically agreeing with the monetarist view. But because A, C, B, and C are definitely not right, as we saw, D will be the right answer from that perspective. And that's why I'll go for D. But I'm assuming in D that P and T are constant. So that's one assumption that I have to make in order for when M to go up, V to go down. So more nodes are there. Won't each node circulate less? Yes, each circulation will be less given PT is constant. How will V decrease? If PT is constant, mera bacha, so when M goes up, V will go down. So for example, if the right hand side is 200, if right hand side is 200 and V is something which we need to find out, and M goes up from when M was 10, then V will be 20. But if M was 3 or when M was 100, V will become 2. So jitna jitna M badega, V girega, given PT are constant. So that's why. Does that make sense? So D is the right answer, but D is the right answer with an assumption that V, P, and T have to be constant. And I guess that's the assumption that we're making here. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. Thank you, Daniel. Good job. This is loanable fund question, so I'm going to skip this question. This is a good question. What will expand? What will expand um, money supply in open economy? Remember, money supply in open economy can go up when you have a current account issue. So a current account balance of payment deficit. What happens if there is a current account balance of payment deficit? If current account balance of payment deficit is happening, then basically what we call the x minus m is less than 0 or negative, which means more money will flow out. Isn't that true? Current account balance of payment अगर deficit होगा तो आपकी exports minus imports will be negative, which means goods are basically flowing out in, more money will flow out, which would mean money supply should go down. As we said, यहाँ पे लिखा है what will expand money supply, not decrease but expand. Um, an increase in reserve ratio results in or reserve ratio means more bank lending, and that basically means money supply will go up. So B will be making sense to us. But let's look at other answers as well. Government borrowing from domestic residents. We say if the government borrows from domestic residents, money supply will be unchanged. If the government is borrowing from the banking sector, money supply will rise. D says government intervention to prevent an appreciation in the foreign exchange value of the domestic currency. Guys, if the government is basically intervening to prevent the appreciation of exchange rate, so basically they make the exchange rate not to appreciate, basically make the exchange rate to go down, that basically means exports will become expensive, or they're preventing exports will become cheaper. Just a minute, guys. So you are basically saying government is intervening to prevent an appreciation. By the way, an increase in cash reserve ratio, I have actually done it wrong, by the way. An increase in cash ratio basically means that bank lending should go down. What am I doing, guys? I'm so sorry. Because when the reserve ratio go up, bank lending goes down. And when bank lending goes down, your money supply should go down. Yeah, you're right. So B can't be the right answer. Arvind's decrease in interest rate should decrease. So, guys, sorry. Does that make sense? Why B is wrong? I'm so sorry, guys. I just an increase in reserve ratio means reserve ratio 20% to 30%. Okay, government the banks are keeping more cash, and if banks are keeping more cash, then there should not be more lending. There should be less lending. Okay, uh, but look at this one. So Aman, you're right. And government intervention to prevent appreciation means exchange rate को आपने कर दिया नीचे. Exchange rate नीचे हुआ, exports सस्ती हो गई, imports महंगी हो गई. And that makes my X minus M to go up. And if my X minus M goes up, basically more money flows in, and that result in basically money supply to go up. So that's why D is the right answer. And open economy का मतलब ही ये है कि trade होनी चाहिए. So this is a key word to remember. But इस सवालों में आप एक चीज देख रहे हैं कि when I'm solving this, I'm actually trying to do all the working because all these sort of concepts are interlinked. So that's one thing you need to be careful about because you got to be making sure that you are when you're doing these questions, you need to a read them properly, unlike me who's not reading them properly, and b you need to make sure that all the linkages are done properly. So there's a lot of these theories that are coming in place in each answer choice. So the answer choice is D. Is there any question before we move on to the next? And I apologize for making these silly mistakes. Thanks for all these smart kids out there, from Oman to Arvind to Daniel to Mariam to everyone to like correcting me. You need to keep on correcting me whenever I do a mistake, and I think that's where we all will learn. Okay, are we going to move on? Okay, I'm going to move on now. Next question. Um, why might a reduction in domestic interest rates have an adverse effect on the country's balance of payment on the current account? Well, we know this that if there is a reduction in interest rates, then we also know this that hot money flows out of the country. Isn't that true? If hot money flows out of the country, then the exchange rate will uh, fall, right? Because if the interest rates are going down, hot money flows out. Hot money flows out, exchange rate falls. Exchange rate falls, exports can become cheaper, imports can become expensive, and that could cause expansion to go up. So we know this that expansion actually goes up when the interest rates are going down. So will it cause a rise in the exchange rate? No, it should cause a fall in the exchange rate. Will it make the country's industry less competitive? No, I think it can make the country more competitive. The higher level of economic activity is likely to increase imports. That could be a possible answer because हो सकता है कि आपका interest rate गिरेगा तो people have more money, and if people have more money they can buy more imports. So this could be a possible answer. There will be an outflow of capital from the country. The outflow of capital will happen, but that will not affect your current account. That will only affect your financial account. That will happen. So in this kind of a case, you may have a case of C to be the right answer. Won't expensive go down? No, Mariam. Why would expensive go down? Uh, we said this, that when the interest rates are going down, hot money flows out of the economy. Hot money flows out of the economy, which means people are now going to put their money elsewhere. So the demand for your currency will fall, the supply of your currency will rise. Demand will fall because people are not putting money in your country because आपके domestic interest rate कम है. Supply बढ़ेगी because आपके domestic individuals are also investing abroad. So that means your exchange rate will fall. And a fall of exchange rate means exports to become cheaper, imports to become expensive, and expensive to go up. Expensive is rising. That doesn't mean exports are rising and imports. Why, Ryan? Why would not it? Why doesn't it mean expensive going up means exports are rising and imports are falling? Expensive means export expenditure. अब ये बोल सकते हैं आपके elastic है या inelastic है. I can agree. I'm assuming goods to be elastic. Uh, the only possible answer C is that when you have low interest rates, and by the way, this is very true. पाकिस्तान में अभी इन्होंने इंटरेस्ट रेट्स को बढ़ाया हुआ है बिकॉज पाकिस्तान में इन्फ्लेशन के डर से गवर्नमेंट ने बोला कि अगर इंटरेस्ट रेट्स को बढ़ा दोगे तो पीपल विल बाय लेस इंपोर्ट्स लाइक बिगेस्ट प्रॉब्लम पाकिस्तान फेसेस इज दैट पीपल स्टार्ट बाइंग इंपोर्टेड कार्स तो उन इंपोर्टेड कार्स को रोकने की वजह से इंपोर्ट को रोकने की वजह से गवर्नमेंट ने किया ये कि इंटरेस्ट रेट्स को भी बढ़ा दिया उसकी वजह से क्या हो रहा है इंटरेस्ट रेट्स को बढ़ाने की वजह से अल्टीमेटली यू लुकिंग एट एक्स माइनस एम you're looking at imports to go down. So the resulting higher level of economic activity is likely to increase imports, can cause the current account to be worsen if the interest rates are going down in the economy. So C is the right answer. Okay, are we good? Does that make sense, guys? Let's move on to do one last question because it's 4:55. Um, Despite a government budget deficit, a country's budget deficit का मतलब होता है T minus G is less than zero. You have a budget deficit, you will finance it through the private sector or you can finance it to the banking sector. If you finance it to the private sector, money supply will be unchanged. If you supply it from the banking sector, money supply will go up. And they're saying that government budget deficit हो रहा है लेकिन country's money supply remains unchanged. This means it is financed by selling it to the general public. So D is the right answer. Okay. If you are financing it to this from the central bank or even commercial bank, money supply will go up. Okay. But if you go to the general public, money supply will remain unchanged. Does that make sense, guys? So that's why D is the right answer. So I've just done 8 MCQs. There are a lot more. We can do them. You should do them and discuss it with me. But that's it for today. Tomorrow we'll meet at 4 o'clock again. Uh, and that will basically be discussing the next chapter. Okay? Does that make sense? I want to